Thank you so much, Mr. President. First of all, I would like to thank very gratefully my friend presenter for his kind invitation and for the opportunity given to me to talk to you today. The aim of my talk will be dealing with the perspectives which are offered to the African continent in terms of development of forensic sciences. And what I'll be telling you today results from my own experience in my country, the different visits I made with the World Federation of Medical Education in some universities in Africa and elsewhere, and obviously from what's said in literature. What I'll be saying is also applicable to many countries outside Africa also. So there's obviously an increasing need for forensic science all over the world, and we've got to look for methods which could fulfill forensic demands. So what's going on in Africa and what's going on in our countries? Mass disasters, criminality, human rights violation, and clandestine immigration are obviously international concerns all over the world, and Africa is not got outside these problems. So we are facing legal and humanitarian procedures, and that's why we've got to develop methods, new methods, up-to-date methods to resolve all these problems. So what's going on in our countries in Africa and perhaps in other continents such as South America, Asia, and so on and so forth? The current situation. As to forensic sciences practice and medical legal systems, there are recent developments. When you look to literature, you will find many papers dealing with forensic science in general, forensic medicine in particular. And you will find that there are developments. But these developments are not uniform because of many factors, political, socio-economical, cultural, etc. But anyway, we are moving from traditional uses to scientific and rational habits. And then, as to the administrative organization, forensic sciences in general, forensic medicine in particular, are related to different ministries depending on the countries. We can find departments of forensic science which are related to ministries of domestic affairs, justice, higher education, health. I'm not here to compare or to say what's better or not, but the most important thing is to optimize and to maximize the benefit from this affiliation. And as to the organization properly said, we've got two models. We can find in Africa the unified model, meaning all the specialties dealing with forensic sciences are unified, are existing in the same institution, mostly an Institute of Forensic Sciences. But you can also, for operational costs, find departments of forensic medicine and pathology related to the Ministry of Health in hospitals, and the departments or the labs of forensic science which are elsewhere related to the Ministry of Domestic Affairs and so on and so forth. But that's not important, but the most important thing is to set up a partnership between all these departments and all these services. And as to forensic science training, we find undergraduate curriculum nearly in all countries except in countries where there are not trainers. But unfortunately in Africa, we've got some countries where there are no professors or training in forensic medicine, pathology especially. And as to postgraduate training, there's a severe lack. There's an absolute lack in training in many countries. I'm not talking about all the countries. Many countries are okay as to training. Egypt, Tunisia, Morocco, Senegal, South Africa, etc. As to literature, provide acceptable, but unfortunately there's a lack, and that's not the mistake of the decision maker. There's a lack, and we've got to train people as to this point. My general assessment as an expert in medical education with the World Federation of Medical Education, done from my visits, is as follows. On the left circle, you've got the forensic medical education, and on the right circle, you will find forensic medical practice. And unfortunately, we can find that even in the advanced countries, discrepancies between what is taught to the students, either undergraduate or postgraduate, and what they do really need. And you've got only in the zone 3 what fits the forensic medical practice as to the forensic medical education points. And we should altogether think to a way to make these two circles superposed, and that's why we are here. As to the perspectives, we had a forum in Canada as to the competencies of the doctor, and we had a session as to the forensic medical doctor. And basically, the competencies are grouped in three big fields: the knowledge, skills, and attitude. But the 21st century forensic medical competencies are as follows. It's what we call the 7 stars doctor or 7-star forensic doctor, etc. The forensic doctor must have forensic expertise. That's basic. He must be able to work in team working. He must be a good manager as to human resource, but also as to financial resources. He must be a health promoter. Don't forget that when you are a pathologist, you are a doctor. And when you are dealing with sudden cardiac death, you must provide counsels to population, to patients, etc. He must be involved in continuing education. He must be professional, and he must be good communicator. So those are great challenges for us. And there's obviously a need for a change, because we must shift from the traditional feature, the traditional model, to the new one. And when we look to the educational spiral, which allow us to perform an overall assessment of the process, we will start by defining the professional need of our population as to the forensic problems, the forensic issues. And then we will select the competencies, we will target the education, the training, and after we will assess the competency attainment, and we will go back in the spiral and go till the summit or to the top of the spiral. And when we refer to Miller's pyramid, we can see that in the bottom of the pyramid we've got the knowledge, meaning a doctor who knows. But is a doctor who knows really competent? No, that's not enough. He must go up to the summit, up to the top of the pyramid. He must know how, he must show, and he must mainly do. So when he does, he will be competent. And education objectives are as follows. We start with the general objectives. We go to the institution, meaning your department, the intermediate, the lab, and after we come to the learning outcomes. And if we take some example, your Minister of Health, the Minister of Domestic Affairs, will ask you as responsible to provide population with best forensic doctors. You will have to graduate as to the institutional objective, graduate competent forensic doctors. And after you will have, for instance, to make your doctors able to perform correct identification of human remains. So, sorry, I'm an anthropologist. That's why I give you these examples. And as a learning outcome, you will be asked to make this doctor able to perform or to list, for instance, criteria for age estimation, pubic symphysis. This is a simple example. But the most important thing, when we learn, when we gather learning outcomes, we will come to competence. And here, I'm giving you some examples, such as a competency, basic competence for each doctor in the African continent. Each doctor must be each forensic doctor, I'm saying. Each forensic doctor must be able to perform external, a correct and appropriate external and internal examination of the body, and so on. But also, we are dealing with clinical forensic medicine. He must be able to assess personal injury related to fracture. And if we want to bring him to research, etc., he must be able to perform a critical reading of a medical legal scientific paper, and so on and so forth. So those are what we call actually in medical education the ESME, meaning the essential skills in medical education. And we've got to sit around table and to speak about that and to set up these ESME. It's fundamental for our future doctor wherever they will be working. But there's a problem here. We must to look to the trainers. We must look for trainers. We need trainers. To train people, we need good trainers. Trainers which will not be lecturers, will be facilitators. And mostly they will put the trainees or the learners in a context-based learning so that they need competencies and they need a high standard of experience level. And tutors is a good example. In many countries, such as mine, we have about 40 or 50 forensic doctors. 20 of them are the university. They are trained to train people and so on. But that's not enough, you can say. So we have involved other people as supervisors at tutors. And we can involve a senior resident, which is nearly assistant professor in supervising young doctors. We can do it in the lack of supervisors in many countries. Providing active methods of learning such as critical thinking, problem-solving learning, clinical forensic reasoning, etc., will bring your future doctor to an automatic continued education. He will be trained to learn by himself. So he will look for improving skills all his life long and will update his experience. When we come to governance of training, we start by professional standards of competence to be set up and then establishing training pathway. It's more easy when a specialty is recognized in the countries which are concerned. And then we will look at supervising training development, and that's what we call audit. Things are not easy, and you don't have to think that it's automatic. We're facing many limitations in our country. Even in the so-called relatively advanced country in forensic sciences or forensic medicine. First of all, we've got to delineate competencies and performance. That's what we call the competency cartography. That's not easy. And it's specific to the countries. We've got to rely on, first of all, on the epidemiologic profile of the continent of the country. Are there many RTAs, road traffic accidents? So we've got to train people, to train your specialists on that point. And if there's a lack of forensic specialists, you've got to train GP general practitioners as to this point because they will be there to solve the problem. The ratio trainers-learners, we've got few trainers in many countries, big great number of learners. So how to solve the problem? The problem could be solved by tutoring young learners, residents, and so on and so forth. There's a lack of time. Many doctors, such as we, are mostly involved in daily practice. We are working all the day. So can we put time to train people, to supervise team? Lack of motivation. You ask someone to supervise young pupils or young students, they will tell you, well, what will it bring to me? Is there an academic progress, etc., etc.? There's skepticism also, and mostly there's a problem of funding, financial problem in many countries. Developing research is another point to be emphasized. Mostly applied research, because it's our priority. We have to focus on our real need in our countries. In Africa, there are many specific points to be developed, and applied research is an important point to be developed here. Setting research units, and don't forget that we can learn by performing research. That's what we call research-based education. And research will lead us to establish evidence-based methods. Federating team, no doctor, as said Professor Stephen Corner yesterday, could be live alone. We are asked to work together in groups, and federating team is an important thing. First of all, to exchange experience, to exchange expertise, to harmonize methods, to pull results, and to build networks. International cooperation is an excellent purpose to be developed here. And when you federate teams, when you federate expertise, you will have a federated response to major events. Many countries are lacking legislation as to forensic practice. It's time to set up legislation, but this will depend mostly on national laws, cultures, facilities, etc. And we are asked to go to quality assurance accreditation, even if in some countries there's not as yet forensic medicine, forensic sciences, etc. We will be asked as to the globalization movement to get into this system, quality assurance accreditation. Even our Justice Department will ask us to be accredited, to be in quality assurance. So we've got to establish protocols, guidelines, and what we call the best evidence medical education, the BEAM. Why best evidence? Because there is not only one evidence medical education in forensic science and forensic medicine in general, but we will have to choose the best which will fit our situation. Ethical rules are important to be respected. Don't forget that we are dealing with people, we are dealing with society, we are going into the body, etc. As to research, as to day-to-day practice, and the data protection is very important. It's very important, and an importance is to be given to this point. The networking is a fundamental key concept here. National societies of forensic science are doing well where they exist. They are working for educational activities, for consensus conferences, etc. I heard yesterday from African friends that an African network of forensic medicine is already set up. It's a great pleasure for me. And I have the pleasure also to learn you that the Forensic Science Academy of Africa is all set. And we have started working. So an invitation is offered to all people who want to join this academy. This is the end of my talk. That's Monastir, and it's 200 meters from the Faculty of Medicine. My students are on the beach when they are not in the lectures. Thank you so much.